Happy Friday, everybody. It is Friday. Oh, it was a full week. I spoke to a bunch of people. I got real thinky this week, real thinky in the last full week before the election, and I am done being thinky. I'm ready to kick around funny headlines with some funny friends. That's what I'm going to do with my Friday, and I'm glad you're here to join us for Friday Release Valve. I am joined once again by the indefatigable Andrew Young. Welcome back, Andrew Young.
I like being described in words which I don't know the meaning of.
I'm not entirely, like, I started making up
I think it means
and then
not.
I panicked. Huh?
Is it just not, can't be made tired?
I don't know. I started making up a word and then I panicked and went to what sounded like a word. And I was like, it sounds positive.
Either way, I've bungled my own intro by asking the question. So
I have never successfully recorded a good intro for you. You've now been on this. This is your third time on Friday Release Valve. You've done like 9 different sci-fi episodes with me, which I'll note, The Matrix should be up this week. We're pre-recording this, but The Matrix on my other podcast, Alienating the Audience, we're talking about the philosophy of The Matrix, and I don't really want to go in depth on it. I don't want to elaborate on this, but I will say that I recorded that entire episode about 15 minutes after I broke my hand. So like props to me for doing a decent job with that one. But anyway, Young, eventually I will come up with a good intro for you, and I'm delighted to have you back. And I am also delighted to have on Brian Parisi, a stand-up comedian friend of mine going way back. Brian, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me.
So I met Brian back in my DC days when I was not yet the haggard, embittered funny man I am now. I was still a bright-eyed, aspiring funny man. And you were, I would say that our kind of, we are the same age, but you started comedy before I did. So I feel like you were already the really cool junior when I was the incoming freshman in the DC comedy circuit, and have gone on to do great things. So the last time you and I performed together, no, I take that back. We did perform once in New York, but right before we left DC, we were both in a contest called, I think, Electoral Dysfunction or something. And you won it, if you remember. And my friends were like, you got robbed. And I was like, no, I didn't. Did you see Brian's act? He was really good. Like, Brian was really funny.
Those contests like kind of blur together. But they were all like named like, you're going to be big. Like, this is a huge deal. And then looking back on it, it's like, oh man, I think I got $200.
I think I got like a 45-second like clip that I could use for a while until they deleted it. But it was at the time it seemed big.
From my understanding, isn't that good for a stand-up show?
Yeah. No, it's just, they were framed like things that were going to make your career. And then they're like, here's a gift certificate to Ruby Tuesdays. And you're like, okay.
That was for sure. Although I will say that Brian has gone on to do great things beyond that. Brian is a former writer for Last Week Tonight with John Oliver and Patriot Act with Hasaj Manan. And it was pretty close. You saw me squinting when I said that. I was about to say,
you were close.
With the indefatigable Hasaj Manan. But those are big shows. You are, like, to be clear on this, you are not just funny. You have like knighthood credentials within the world of comedy.
Oh, thank you. I mean, they're great. They're great shows. I'm proud I worked on them for sure. Knighthood might be strong, but
Hey, Brian, do those two hosts hate each other?
No, they don't. They both come from, I think there are hosts that hate each other, but they're not. They both come from like the Daily Show universe. So they're
Okay, so no carryover bad blood from the death trap that is the Daily Show.
I don't think so. No.
Well, the other big thing I should bring up is that, Brian, you have now launched a comedy album, Last Request.
Yes. It drops like worldwide everywhere on election day. But it's available for pre-order this week. So it's out there. It's my first one, even though I've been doing stand-up for a while. It's my first one, and I'm proud of it. It came out good.
That's awesome, man. Well, you know what, I have been like, here's where you're at within my comedy explanation. I don't like you because of how funny you are as a comedian. I'm saying this, like, for people listening.
That's the highest compliment you can get, I think, as a comic.
Exactly. I actively dislike Brian, and it's only because of how talented Brian is. It's not because you're always very pleasant when we interact. I have nothing against you as a person. I'm just very jealous of your comedic abilities. So I look forward to your album coming out very much. I've like I said, I got to watch you when you were like really getting the party started, and I think you're a very talented, funny guy. I sincerely hope that your album really overshadows the election on Tuesday. I hope that is the big headline.
Yeah, that would be big if people were no longer talking about the election.
Yeah, people are like, a couple major upsets. One, Howie Hawkins, the Green Party candidate, won. Nobody saw that coming. But after that, did anybody see that Brian Parisi just blew everybody out of the water? They preemptively given him an Oscar, and it's not even a category. And that is Last Request, Brian. Where can people pre-order that album?
It's Last Wishes. Yeah.
Excuse me. I'm sorry. Last Wishes. My apologies.
Good. Yep. And yeah, it'll be on everything. This week it's available for pre-order, which is great if people can do that, because then when it comes out, you might be thinking about other things on election day. So I'm encouraging people to do that. But yeah, it'll be available on all the streaming platforms and everything as well. So
come election day, like, what are your options that evening? Your options are like get drunk or champagne sex or riot. Like, those are the three. It's like, why not add a comedy album to the mix?
Sure.
That seems like the most helpful to your body and to private property. Like, really, it's the only way you're going to help the economy.
Can people order a signed copy?
No, I don't think. I'm not doing physical stuff right now. So I'm not doing physical album. I'm gonna get some done for when I go touring and doing stand up, so I can sell merch afterwards. But right now I'm just doing it all online. But I'm hoping that I love that plug, Andrew, that people could use it. You definitely covered all the ways. I was thinking more of like people waiting in line, maybe. If there's an election line that's 2 hours long, you could listen to my album several times.
You could sell albums in line.
Yeah. This is what comedians need, is more on the street stuff these days.
On the street comedy album selling.
Congratulations on it, Brian. And I look forward to listening to it. Let's go ahead and get to some of the week's underserved headlines. In Iowa, man who stole election sign goes on to steal newspapers that reported it. This fellow is named Peter DeJager from Dickinson County, Iowa, and he, I assume, is a Trump supporter because he got in trouble for stealing a Biden sign out of his neighbor's lawn, which, he paid the fine. I don't think they arrested him, but they charged him, paid the fine. And so his name appeared in the crime section of the Dickinson Times or whatever it was, Dickinson County News. But then the following day, after this guy has stolen the Biden sign and got in trouble for it, the local delivery man calls up the Dickinson County News and goes, "Hey, can I get one of the newspapers? I've never seen it sold out before." And they're like, "What are you talking about?" And he's like, "Everywhere I've been, all of the Dickinson County newspapers are gone." And they're like, "That's not normal. No one reads newspapers anymore. This is a tax dodge." And so they started looking at security footage, and lo and behold, there's DeJager sneaking into all these gas stations and just grabbing armfuls of newspapers to try and cover up the shock and shame of being in the crime section by stealing all of the newspapers recording it. And I read this and I thought, this is just a classic example of it's the cover up that gets you. It's not the crime. I mean, this is what happened to Nixon during Watergate. They started, printing stuff about him in the papers, and he tried to steal all those papers. He tried to see, Nixon's leaving the White House, going to the newspaper offices, grabbing armfuls, and that's where they caught him. That's what happened to Nixon, as I recall.
This whole story tracks with me.
Like, this, you would do it?
Yeah, no, it all makes sense to me. But I think it's because, listen, if you're going to steal Joe Biden signs because you think it's going to affect anything, then of course you're going to steal newspapers because you think it's going to affect something.
Yeah.
It makes sense to me. That, or maybe he just wanted paper.
Ooh, I hadn't thought about that. Like, maybe he hates Joe Biden, but he loves paper mache.
Yeah. Or origami.
Yeah, right now he's making his own pinata or something at home, and he's like, "But where can I get that newspaper in these times?"
Yeah, and when they took away his one source, which was Biden's signs, that he was able to freely get off lawns.
Or, what, the other funny thing would be, alternately, if he's like a huge Joe Biden supporter and he just wanted more Joe Biden, he's like, my lawn has an insufficient amount of Joe Biden signs, therefore I'm going to go steal one. And then he gets in trouble, and he's like, "I can't let the Biden community know that I did this. I have to steal all these newspapers."
Or he's a collector, Heaton. Like, he's going to add this to his collection of Wilkie posters that he has in his basement.
I like that.
Where did the what?
Sorry,
yeah, go ahead, Brian.
I like that he's
just going to say.
Sorry.
It's like we're dancing. This is the problem with doing it over Zoom, is that there's like a 3-second lag. I was just going to say, if you buy campaign material, I recommend you do it in cash, because I have made this mistake before where I'm like, I'm just going to buy this as a historical memento, and now I am like on every political list ever. It's like in a Greek tragedy where Persephone eats the seeds, and now she must go to Hades for 6 months. You're like, every election cycle, I get like 13 calls a day because I bought one mug and put my actual information with it back in 2010. What were you going to say, Brian?
I think it's so funny in this story that the guy, like, he stole like what amounts to, I think, $20 worth of newspaper. Like, he could have bought out the newspapers at that gas station, and if he wanted to cover his tracks, but he was like, no, I'm gonna double down on the crime. He's like he's like a very shallow descent into the crime world, where he's doing just very light crime, from one light crime to the next.
Yeah,
he probably parked in a tow zone after that. Like, he's just
right.
he's doing like very little tiny crimes. I also think it's
Yeah.
like, I grew up in a small town. Like, by the time it hits the paper, everybody already knows what you did. Like,
Right.
you know what I mean? If he got in trouble for like and arrested for stealing that, everybody in the town, when I got arrested in my town, everybody knew about it before it got in the paper. Like, you're not going to do anything.
You know, it just occurred to me, maybe he was trying to affect only his grandmother or grandfather who read the paper from that one gas station.
Oh.
Maybe this is all for one or no, I was going to okay, no,
No,
I was going to say
I actually really like this idea that he's going in the early morning, cup of coffee, and he's like going to go steal these newspapers, and they like arrest him, and he's like, oh man, I really regret this, but you didn't replace the newspapers at the 14th and E stop, did you? And they're like, no, and he's like, good, mission accomplished. Like, he doesn't care. He doesn't care if he goes to prison. He just doesn't want Grandpa Bertold to see what he did.
Yeah, Young, you kind of sound like you could be his lawyer. You're like, all he was trying to do was protect his old poor grandmother from seeing.
I volunteer. I was about to say, for pro bono work on this.
Based on this man's grasp of how to execute crime and get away with it, I think hiring Andrew Young as his lawyer would be the logical next step in his felonious career. Great. Well, good luck to Mr. DeYager on all of his campaign stops. Over in either the UK or Iceland, depending on how we want to phrase this, British supermarket launched a chicken nugget into space. It is a chain called Iceland, which, as I understand it, is actually based in Britain. And to celebrate their 50th anniversary, they launched a chicken nugget into space. They put it on a rocket. It soared into the stratosphere and touched the face of God, and then had some sort of parachute that deployed it. I think it hit like 62,000 feet at 200 miles an hour, which would be the fastest chicken in all of human history, and then sank back down to Earth. And I read this and I just thought, if we could just figure out how to restart the space race with large multinational fast food chains, I think we could get to Mars. Like, if KFC and McDonald's actually wanted to put their shoulder into it, that might be how we get a moon base.
I actually think that's probably true, Heath.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, I have to correct you on one thing.
Did I lapse into just good punditry again instead of being funny? I apologize. I was supposed to be doing jokes. I'm sorry.
No, you were just offering good financial and space race advice, Eden.
Yeah.
But I have to correct you on one fact. The fastest chicken in human history is Michael Collins, because he was too much of a coward to go with those two guys and land on the moon.
Wait, hold on. You're talking about the guy that operated the Mercury capsule while Buzz Aldrin and Neil Armstrong. So your understanding is that they got to the moon, they park on the moon, and they're like, "Hey, Michael, we're gonna go walk around on the moon," and he's like, "No, I'll stay here." You could be beers. I don't know.
He stayed up in space while the two of them went down because he was a coward. Therefore, he is the fastest chicken in human history.
I'm going to have to double check the Wikipedia article, but I think you're right. As I recall, NASA had ordered them all to go down, and he said no, and he just stayed up and read a magazine, and then later when they got home, like, swam in a t-shirt.
Listen, if you can believe that the entire moon landing was shot in a soundstage in Burbank, then you can absolutely believe my contention that Michael Collins was a coward for not landing on the moon with his friends.
I approve of this very specific vendetta you have with a dead astronaut.
Anyway, back to the story.
I feel like that if we're gonna go conspiracy theories, I want to throw out one that I'm pitching on this story is that chicken nuggets originated in space. I
Whoa.
feel like that they're at least 80% asteroid dust, and
Mm-hmm.
and if you, I think if you ever had a chicken nugget that like has real chicken in it, you know how they have like Applegate or whatever, like they have like real. It's like, oh, that's not it. That's not what a chicken nugget is. Chicken nuggets are from fucking space, dude. And they came down here like during the dinosaur days, and people just gathered them up. I think McDonald's gathered them up and were like, "This is chicken," and it's not.
Like they've got like a silo, like a cavernous silo somewhere in the Nevada
Yeah,
desert that they like send SUVs down into, and they've
yeah,
got all these weird glowing eggs that they're like, let's just go ahead and pump them in.
yeah. You made that very visual, and I appreciate that. Now I feel like it
Yeah.
could be a movie.
I'm truly imagining. I'm imagining the scene in Alien where they enter the ship and it's like this giant rib cage of a device, and then inside they open up one of the eggs, but instead of a tentacled monster coming out and sucking your face, it's just nuggets.
Yeah. Which and if that sounds really crazy for people listening, remember that the other if the reality you want to live in is not the one that we just painted, it's the reality where like basically the chicken lips and gizzard and anus that can't be made into a regular meal are pulped into a gray sludge that's then deep fried and given to you in the pretense that it used to be a part of the chicken rather than an actual liquefied chicken from the bits you can't otherwise eat. That's reality. If you want that one, I'd rather live in the one where there are all these bits coming out of a cave.
That's gross.
Yeah, that's
By the way, I don't know if you looked at the company that sent the nugget into space, which is well titled. The company name is Sent Into Space, which I think is a good name for a company. Uh, and on their website, it says world's leading space marketing company specializing in space themed marketing campaigns and publicity stunts.
oh,
Which,
can we get in on that? How do I get in on that? Like how do I could like set up a flash drive with a podcast on it or something and have it
yeah,
like be the first orbital podcast?
or you can just send up a pipe you smoked, which is more on theme for you, Heaton.
That very much seems on me for me. That like, ideally what they could do, Young, is if they could send up like a meerschaum pipe into the stratosphere and then have it like come down on a parachute and then like land in the Indian subcontinent where like a young man runs up and grabs it, just starts smoking it, like something like that. Like that would be like a really on brand thing for me of like, you're welcome. And yeah, no, I should definitely contact them. That's a
Yeah,
very good idea.
Keaton, get a quote.
Yeah, that's yeah. Wait, okay, good. This is good to know. So it's not just Iceland, the supermarket chain. There is a space marketing / launch company. Very good to know.
Yeah,
I like it better if like the grocery store was like, we're gonna handle this ourselves. we gotta do this in house. We're gonna go to the meat department, see who has ideas.
Yeah, it's a good point. Yeah, Iceland probably doesn't have a propulsion section. Back when I was in DC, back when the halcyon days of Brian and I tell jokes of the nation's capital, I was working for Congress at the time, and I would go to astronaut meet and greets whenever I could. And I had like this strung out. Yeah, this was a thing back. Like I assume that they're still doing it when astronauts come back to Earth.
Wow.
They'll do a meet and greet at Congress, and like if you're working for Congress, you can just kind of roll in, which is what I would do. So I would I was nobody, but I'd walk in and like hang out with all these astronauts. And I was the mission that had just got back. STA 127. I don't remember which one it was. They one of the things they'd done is that a Canadian company had paid the astronauts, like they'd offered to like fund some aspect of the mission. They underfunded some piece of equipment if they would use their golf club to hit a golf ball into space from the shuttle or whatever it was. And so I talked to them and I was like, so what happened to it? And they're like, well, we were close enough to the Earth that the ball would have entered the Earth's rotation. Like it would have probably gone around the Earth 50 or 60 times before finally coming in back down to Earth. And I was like, and then it would come back down to Earth. And they're like, yeah, it would eventually come down to Earth. And I was like, so there's a chance you hit a hole in one from space that like it went around the Earth 60 times and then like landed at a golf course. And they were like, it's not very likely. And I'm like, but if that did happen, you and I would have to believe in God. Like that would be the only explanation. And then the guy moved on. He did not want to discuss golfing probability with me.
So you were trying to convert an astronaut. a pagan atheist astronaut.
I was in the same camp. I was just like, I think we have to admit that if you did hit a hole in one from space and it rotated around the world 60 times first, I think we'd have to admit we don't understand probability. Like if I witnessed that, I'd be like, clearly I don't understand the universe as I thought I did.
Definitely.
All right. Next story. We're gonna kick it up to New York. Brian, are you in New York right now? Where are you located?
I am in New York right now. Yeah.
You're in New York, okay.
In the city?
Yeah, I'm in Brooklyn.
How is it there?
It's good. Yeah, right now it's good. Hopefully it stays that way.
Nice. Here's hoping. In New York, restaurant couple mistakenly served 2000 Mouton 1989 bottle of wine after ordering an $18 of Pinot Noir. A young couple who ordered an $18 of Pinot Noir at Balthazar in New York found themselves enjoying Mouton Rothschild 1989 listed at $2,000 following a mix-up, according to the owner. The staff served them this $2,000 bottle of wine instead of the $18 bottle of wine. Realized what they did, but the owner felt that it would be, how did he put it? The owner felt it would be unconscionable to take the glasses of wine from them once they started sipping them. So they were allowed to finish drinking their glasses of wine. And then I think they just gave the table that actually ordered it. Although apparently the table that ordered the $2,000 bottle of wine perfectly enjoyed the $18 bottle of wine, which raises some real questions about the actual veracity of wine tasting. I think this is actually pretty good advertising for Balthazar's, because if I were in New York, I'd be like, oh, if we go to Balthazar's, like we could probably bribe one of the waiters to give us better wine. Like if I were to give this guy $50, he might give me $1,000 bottle of wine.
I'm mad reading this story, Heaton. Even I agree. You probably could. I'm just mad that a 30-year-old bottle of wine is $2,000. That pisses me off so much.
Yeah, that's a good point. That also makes me feel old now that you, that you phrase it that way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
a wine that is younger than us, all three of us.
Yep.
Is $2,000, and I suspect that it's not the wine. I suspect that the bottle itself is what is $2,000, because there's some special nonsensical bullshit logo on it that's made out of gold diamond leaf bullshit that is $2,000.
All this checks out to me. All of this makes sense to me. Brian, do you know anything about wine? Can you destabilize our hypothesis here?
This is where I am on wine. This is how little of a wine guy I am. When I read this article and they were like, there's a young couple that got an $18 Pinot Noir, I was like, ooh, they got the fancy one. Like, I thought that was like, I was like, okay.
It was the end of the story.
Yeah,
young couple does well.
That's way more than $11. So yeah, I'm not a wine person, and I've never been in like a bougie situation like this where I feel like if this guy at work who gave them the wrong wine, like he, that kind of a mistake where you give somebody like something that could be $2,000, like I've just never worked a job like that. Like one time when I was working landscaping, I spread the mulch too thick. Like that's the closest that I can come. So like I'm just very much not in this world, and I can't wrap my head around it.
I love the idea of a couple coming out to their backyard and the husband going, sweetie, feel the mulch. And she's like, oh my God, that feels like 3/4 inches thick. That should only be 1/2 inch thick. Yeah, we completely snuck out. Let's go have crazy champagne sex to celebrate our windfall today. I love you.
Just out of curiosity, Heaton, have you ever bribed a waiter to get something better?
I haven't bribed a waiter. You know what I did? Young, you've been with me to Marie's Crisis before when I'm in New York. Brian, have you been to Marie's Crisis before?
No.
So Marie's Crisis.
Brian, do you like show tunes?
Yeah, do you like show tunes?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, great.
That's about what I expected as the answer.
That's so Brian's being nice. That's fine.
No,
I'm okay
medium.
with that.
I don't seek them out, but I'm not like angry about it. I'm not like, oh, show tunes,
You're not going to commit a hate crime.
Yeah.
But you're also probably not going to expend money to go to My Fair Lady. That's fine. So Marie's Crisis is my favorite bar in New York. It's a Broadway show tunes piano bar where everybody sings show tunes, or did up until the pandemic. I don't know how they are. I hope they're doing well. And about a year ago, I was there, and the line gets really long on Fridays and Saturdays. Like if you get there after 8 p.m., you're going to be in line for an hour. And I had a nice young lady was meeting me at said bar, and we were going to have a nice evening. And I got in at the appropriate time, and I warned her about all of this. And she showed up at like 8:15, so she was going to be in line for like an hour and a half. So I went back to the top of the stairs and struck up the person operating the door, and I was just real charming and kind of drunk, and I went, "Hey, have you ever had a bribe before?" And she was like, I don't think I have. And I'm like, so what I'm going to do is give you $20 and you're going to let in that redhead over there into the bar. And then she just let her in because she thought it was weird. So does that count, Young? Does that
Uh,
count?
yeah, I guess it's the same as getting a $2,000 bottle of wine.
I think you bribed her
Right.
with like creepiness. Like she was just creeped out by you. She didn't even
Yeah.
take the money. She was just like, if this can end the conversation, I'll let this girl out.
Is it maybe this should be my negotiating tactic is I'm going to be this like if like Fezziwig from the Christmas Carol, like the old genial dude like popped into existence. It was just odd and friendly but very uncomfortable, and we just want to end this conversation. Like that will be my negotiating tactic. I think this is something I should put my shoulder into.
But I think you should specifically do it at places where everyone would be like, "Why would anyone bribe me for what they're bribing me for?"
That you and I saw, what was it? Was it Life of a Fish or something we saw on Broadway here 3 or 4 years ago? The one Larry David wrote.
Oh, yeah, what was that called? It was
Uh,
something related to fish.
it was something related to fish, and I thought the funniest thing in the whole thing was that one of the people just assumed he was supposed to tip doctors.
Yeah.
That he would like get like they like give him a diagnosis like yeah you looks like you fractured your femur, and he'd be like okay, and then he'd give him a 20.
That was a good bit.
Yeah, and you know what, I started doing that. Like when I was working in television, one time I tipped one of the guests as they came off stage, and it ruined their day because they just did not know, like they did not know how to interpret that. Of like, should I regularly be getting tipped? How come I've never been tipped before? Is this like, did I do particularly well this time? Like all I did was inject their life with question marks. It was the best debilitating psychological warfare I've done since I tried to bribe that lady at Reese Crisis. Oh, okay, from North Carolina. Woman goes to vote, told she's ineligible because she is dead. This is from High Point, North Carolina. Shout out to High Point. A man named Marianne Leonard had gone to vote early and was told that she had died a couple of years earlier, which she found odd because she was speaking, and that didn't add up in her mind. They eventually found out that somebody with her name had died, and that had caused the confusion. But I think the more likely scenario is this woman is a vampire and should have been murdered on the spot. If the election goes how I don't want it to go, because North Carolina lets a bunch of vampires who are confirmed dead vote, I am going to be pissed.
Well, Heaton, as you know, I went to college in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, which
I
is
do know
like
that,
30,
yeah.
30 minutes from High Point. And I can tell you that really, they're all dead.
They're all dead on the inside.
They're all dead on the inside.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
this woman's story is not unique, and she shouldn't feel special.
I like how hard you're going at that area of the country.
And specifically Marianne Leonard of High Point, North Carolina. She's not special.
Yeah, she got it. She got her story in the news. Good for her. She didn't deserve it because she's dead on the inside already.
Man,
I like the
yeah,
story. I like the story. Sorry, go ahead.
We need to keep a tally, Young, of who you're taking shot. Michael Collins and Marianne Leonard. Like you're making a lot of enemies on today's episode. Brian, please go ahead. I apologize for stepping on you.
No, it's all good. Yeah, I like this story if she's alive and comes to the polls, but then dies later that day, because I feel like it would just be sort of, it would be like a very boring sequel to Final Destination, you know, where just like people are getting killed by, like, if anyone's touched by a minor clerical error, they get killed later. I would watch that.
This, by the way, Brian, that sounds like the most libertarian horror film I've ever heard of. Where, like, if you manage to touch bureaucratic small errors, you die, and it's just this person like running away from red tape for fear of being strangled by it. Yeah, or the other situation would be, maybe we could get this rolling as as some sort of like superstitious harbinger of, if you go to vote in the polls and they're like, oh, Like, I'm afraid you're already dead. Like, if you vote, you will die. Like, that is like the Grim Reaper is speaking through the 72-year-old docent at a folding table in a gym, telling you not to do it.
I'm just trying to imagine like Final Destination type scenes, where like the oven catches on fire, the whole house turns into like a giant gas ball, but happening in like, I don't know, a Rotary Club with like the little separated panels set up, and just old guys sitting in chairs saying, "Here's your ballot," and then something goes horribly wrong, and I don't know, all the banners from the Rotary Club fall down and suffocate someone.
I'll watch that film.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Anything to watch old people in North Carolina bite it.
Just out of curiosity, to follow the thread you were talking about earlier, do you believe that vampires should not be eligible to vote, and if so, why?
Oh man, well now I feel like a bigot. I just sort of assumed we were all on board with vampires not voting, but now that I think about it, like I don't know. I guess if you're ambulatory and you're an American citizen, even if you're dead, I support you being able to vote. So yes.
Well, because I think you raise an interesting question, because we've had a lot of discussion about money influencing elections and having a disproportionate, if you have more money, you have a disproportionate impact on the voting system. If you've lived for 300 years and voted in that many elections, you also have a disproportionate impact on who gets elected. So I don't know. I just think it's something that should be sent to the Supreme Court.
Yeah. Yeah. My guess is if you're 300 years old and voting, I'm guessing you're just writing in other dead people. You're like, man, we sure could use Harding, and like going for that. And maybe that'll be the thing that spoils the election this year, Young. Maybe it'll be people writing in like dead presidents of like, I didn't like either of them, so I wrote in Reagan. And it's like, man, Reagan outdid Jill Stein this time around. Whoops.
I could see it happening. And
Yeah.
Reagan might be a vampire.
Also possible. Gang, I will wrap it up for today. Then it's been delightful talking to you, Andrew Young. Thank you for coming on again to be indefatigable here on the show. Delightful to talk to you. I look forward to the day when you and I could, go to any place to listen to musicals. That's not just a tool shed at your house.
Thanks for having me.
Brian, it is a pleasure to reconnect with you. Thank you for coming on the program. You're a very, very funny guy. I was excited to bring you on, and I was kind of hoping you would fail because it would make me feel better about myself as a comedian, but you knocked it out of the park.
Thanks,
well
man.
done. You're very funny. Good luck with your album. Congratulations on it. It comes out Tuesday. And what's the name again?
It's Last Wishes.
Wonderful. All right. And do you guys want to stick around we'll do one more story for Patreon people as a bonus thing?
Yeah, great. That sounds good.
Yeah.
Good. Excellent.
Yeah.
Young looked at me like he knew he could screw his stuff. Young, I appreciate you only giving me that look. Great. So on the main feed, goodbye, everybody. Have a great weekend. And Patreon people, stick around. We're going to do one more.